Hey everyone. I've been sitting on this story for a while now, trying to wrap my head around everything. Honestly, I'm not the type to share personal things like this, but I feel like I need to get it off my chest. It's been a few weeks since everything went down, and even though I know I made the right decision, it still feels unreal. I was engaged to someone I thought I would spend my life with, but one night changed everything. Let me start by introducing myself. I'm Adam, 29 years old, and I work in it. I've always been a pretty laid-back guy, maybe even too laid back sometimes. I don't like drama or making a big deal out of things. If something's bothering me, I'd rather talk it out and move on. But that was never Kendra's style. Kendra, my ex-fiancée, was 27 and worked in marketing. She thrived on energy, was super outgoing, and loved being the center of attention. When we first got together, her fiery personality was something I loved. She was passionate, determined, and had this confidence that made you believe she could take on the world. Over time, though, I began to notice that her passion sometimes crossed a line into stubbornness. There were small red flags that I ignored at first, like the time we went to a dinner party with my coworkers, and she made a comment about how I could have dressed better in front of everyone, laughing like it was a joke. Or the times when we went out to eat, and she always had to pick the restaurant. If I suggested something different, she would roll her eyes or say, "Well, I guess you don't care if I enjoy dinner." At first, I thought it was just her being particular, but over time, it felt like things always had to go her way. If she wanted something, she wouldn't back down until she got it. I brushed it off, thinking no one is perfect, but deep down, I could tell something wasn't right. Fast forward 4 years, and we were engaged. Wedding planning was intense. Kendra had this Pinterest-perfect vision for our wedding. A massive affair with over 200 guests, an elaborate venue, and God knows how many floral arrangements. Meanwhile, I wanted something smaller, more intimate, and manageable. We weren't rolling in money, and I didn't see the point of blowing our savings on a single day. But every time I brought up my concerns, it turned into a fight. She accused me of not caring about the wedding or not putting in the effort. I tried to explain that I wasn't against the wedding. I just wanted us to be realistic. It wasn't just about the guest list. Every detail had to meet her exact vision. I remember this one time when she spent 2 hours debating with the florist about the color of the centerpieces. And when I suggested we go with something simpler, she snapped at me, saying, "If you're not going to take this seriously, why are you even here?" She completely ignored the fact that I had left work early to make it to that appointment. It wasn't about compromising. It was about her winning. And then came that night. We were in the living room, buried under the chaos of wedding planning. Papers were scattered everywhere, sticky notes clinging to random surfaces, and a big binder sat open on the coffee table. Kendra had spent months assembling it, and now it looked like it was holding her sanity together by a thread. She was pacing back and forth, her words tumbling out in an endless rant about finalizing the guest list. She was fixated on inviting a sea of distant relatives that I couldn't even begin to place. Cousins twice removed, their kids, their plus ones. It felt absurd. I sat on the couch, watching her whirl around the room like a storm, trying to find the right moment to speak. "Kendra," I said cautiously, "do we really need to invite people we barely know? Shouldn't this be about the people closest to us?" She stopped mid-step, slowly turning to face me. Her eyes were sharp, and her posture was stiff. "Why don't you take this seriously? Adam, do you even care about this wedding?" That question hit like a punch to the gut. I felt the tension in my chest rise, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Of course I care," I said evenly. "But it's not about how many people are there or how extravagant it is. It's about us, about starting our life together." Her expression darkened, and her voice rose. "You just don't get it. This isn't about us. It's about celebrating what we have with the people who've been there for our families. This is supposed to be the most important day of our lives, and you're treating it like a business transaction." "It's not that," I said, struggling to keep my frustration in check. "I just think we need to be realistic. We can't afford to invite half the state. That's not what's going to make the day special." Her laugh was short and bitter. "Realistic? You mean cheap, right? You don't care about making this day memorable. You just care about the price tag." "Kendra, come on," I said, my voice tightening. "That's not fair. I'm trying to keep us from going into debt over this. Isn't that what matters? Starting our marriage on solid ground." You always do this, she snapped, stepping closer. Her tone was sharp enough to cut. You make me feel like I'm ridiculous for wanting something beautiful. Why do I even bother trying to make this special when you clearly don't care? I stood up, my frustration boiling over. Don't put words in my mouth. I care. But I'm not going to pretend throwing money at it will make it better. This is supposed to be about love, not putting on a show for people we barely know. She was trembling now, her face flushed, her hands balled into fists at her sides. You're impossible, she said through gritted teeth. You don't hear me. You never hear me. Her voice cracked, and for a second, I thought the tension might break into something softer, a chance to de-escalate. But then she closed the distance between us, her movements abrupt and determined. Before I could finish, her hand came down hard across my face. The slap echoed in the silence that followed, leaving a sharp sting on my cheek and an even deeper one in my gut. For a moment, I just stood there, stunned. I've never been in a situation like that before, and it felt like time froze. My cheek was burning, but it wasn't the pain that got to me. It was the sheer disbelief. This was someone I loved, someone I was supposed to marry, and she had just crossed a line I never thought she would. I stared at her, my mind racing to process what had just happened. Her expression shifted immediately from fury to shock. Her mouth opened slightly. Her face went pale. Adam, she whispered, her voice shaky and unsteady. I didn't mean to, I swear I didn't. I couldn't speak for a moment. I could feel my chest rising and falling as I fought to keep my composure. Looking back, there had been moments leading up to this, the way she'd throw verbal jabs when she didn't get her way, or escalate every disagreement until I was the one who brushed it off to keep the relationship intact. This wasn't a one-off. It wasn't just a sudden loss of control. It was the boiling point of something that had been simmering for a long time. Finally, I stood up slowly and deliberately and met her eyes with a calmness that even surprised me. Pack your things, I said, my voice quiet but unyielding. Her eyes widened, and she took a half step back, her hands clutching each other. What? Adam, wait. No, I didn't mean it. You have to believe me. I wasn't thinking. I was just so Stop, I interrupted, holding up my hand. I don't care what your excuse is. You put your hands on me. Kendra, that's not something I'm ever going to tolerate. Get your stuff and get out. She started crying, pleading with me to let her explain, but I wasn't having it. There was no room for compromise anymore. There's nothing to explain, I said firmly. You crossed a line, and I'm done. Pack your things and go. She tried to argue, but I wasn't going to let her guilt me into backing down. I stood there, arms crossed, watching as she grabbed her purse and some of her things. Her hands were shaking, and she kept looking at me, like she was expecting me to change my mind. But I didn't. When she finally left, the house felt eerily quiet. I sat back down on the couch, staring at the wedding binder and the mess of papers she had left behind, realizing that I had just ended a 4-year relationship in the span of 15 minutes. The craziest part, I wasn't even angry anymore. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Calls, texts, notifications. It felt like the whole world wanted to know what was going on. Kendra must have told a few people, and it spread like wildfire. I decided to start dealing with the fallout first. I called my parents. My mom answered right away, her voice bright and cheery, like she was expecting a wedding update. Adam, how's it going? Did you and Kendra finally decide on the cake? I took a deep breath. Mom, there's no cake. There's no wedding. I broke it off. She didn't say anything for a moment, and I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, You what? In that tone, only a mother can pull off equal parts shock and disappointment. Look, it's a long story, I said, but it's over. Kendra's out of the house, and I'm calling off the wedding. She didn't take it well. Adam, this is a huge deal. People are expecting a wedding. Do you realize how embarrassing this will be for everyone involved? Mom, I cut in. She crossed the line. More silence. Then she softened. Oh, honey, are you okay? I'm fine, I replied. But I'm not marrying someone who thinks that's acceptable. That seemed to click for her. She let out a long sigh and said, I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. I'll tell your father. Do you need anything? No, I'm good. Just maybe give me some space for a bit, she agreed, though I could hear the worry in her voice. After hanging up, I moved on to the next task, canceling the wedding. I started with the venue. The woman on the other end of the line was polite, but hesitant when I told her we wouldn't be moving forward. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said. "We'll need to discuss the deposit." "Keep it," I said, not caring. Then there was the photographer, the caterer, and the DJ. Each call felt like ripping off a bandage. By the time I was done, I was mentally drained. That's when the texts from Kendra started pouring in. At first, they were apologetic, long paragraphs about how she was sorry, how she didn't mean to slap me, how stress had overwhelmed her. But then they shifted to anger. "I can't believe you'd throw away 4 years over one mistake," she wrote. "You're being so dramatic." By the end of the day, they were a mix of desperation and guilt-tripping. "You're ruining my life," she texted. "Everyone's asking me what happened, and I don't know what to say." I didn't respond to any of it. What was there to say? She knew what she'd done. Things got worse when mutual friends started reaching out. Some were supportive. My buddy Nate called to check on me. "Dude, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said. "Just dealing with the fallout. You did the right thing," he said. "No one should have to put up with that." Others weren't so understanding. Kendra's friend Taylor, for instance, decided to take her side. She started posting vague but pointed comments on social media, stuff like, "Some people can't handle a strong, independent woman. And imagine being so fragile, you ruin a relationship over nothing." She didn't tag me directly, but it was obvious who she was talking about. It didn't bother me as much as it should have. If anything, it was just annoying. I didn't care what Taylor thought of me. What did bother me, though, was how Kendra's parents reacted. Her mom called me the day after I ended things, her voice shaky and full of guilt. "Adam, please don't do this," she said. "Kendra's been under so much stress. She didn't mean to hurt you." "I'm sorry," I replied, "but there's no coming back from this. I can't marry someone who thinks it's okay to lay hands on me, no matter the reason." "She's devastated," her mom said. "She loves you. Can't you give her another chance?" "No," I said firmly. "I've made my decision." Her dad called later that evening, but his tone was colder. "I don't know what happened," he said, "but this is going to reflect badly on both of you. People will talk." "Adam, are you ready for that?" I almost laughed. "With all due respect, sir, I'm more concerned with my personal boundaries than what people might say." He hung up shortly after, clearly unimpressed. By the end of the week, I felt like I'd been put through the ringer. I wasn't sad or heartbroken, just exhausted. The emotional weight of dealing with everyone's opinions was heavier than I'd expected. But as the days passed, I started to feel lighter without Kendra in my life. The house was quieter. Yes, but it was also peaceful. Still, something about the whole situation didn't sit right with me. Kendra's reaction to the breakup felt off. Sure, she was upset, but her focus seemed less on what she'd done and more on how I'd responded. She was trying to paint herself as the victim, and I started wondering if there was more to the story. Was the slap really just a moment of stress? Or was there something deeper going on? It wasn't like her to lose control like that. It wasn't like Kendra to lose control. She had always been the one who thrived on drama, who thrived on being the one to steer the situation. It was always about her emotions, her vision for how things should be. That slap, what was it really about? Sure, it was about frustration, but it felt so much more deliberate than that. I started replaying everything in my mind, trying to figure out the bigger picture. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like she had been looking for a way to push me until I snapped, to give her a reason to end things without her being the one to take responsibility for her actions. She didn't want to be the villain in her own story, so she was trying to bait me into being the one who messed up. I didn't take the bait. I didn't lose control, and now I was left to deal with the mess she had left behind. But there was more. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something wasn't right. It wasn't just that she slapped me. It wasn't just that she had been manipulative, demanding, and stubborn throughout the relationship. No, something else was going on. I had felt it for months, the distance, the weird vibes, the sudden bursts of anger over things that didn't matter. She had been acting out of character, and I had brushed it off as wedding stress. But deep down, I knew there was more to it. And that's when I got the call. Lauren, she was one of our mutual friends, someone I trusted. If anyone knew what was really going on with Kendra, it would be her. Lauren called one afternoon, sounding hesitant, which was unusual for her. She wasn't the type to hold back, to sugarcoat things. She was blunt, and that's why I always trusted her. "Hey, Adam," she started. "Can we talk? I think there's something you should know about everything." My stomach dropped. Something didn't sit right with me, and I had a bad feeling. "What's up?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual, even though my heart was racing. She hesitated, as though unsure how to proceed. Finally, she said, "Not over the phone. Can we meet in person?" My mind was already running through possibilities. Something was off. Something big was coming, and I needed to know what it was. I agreed, and we made plans to meet at a cafe later that day. When I walked in, Lauren was already sitting in a corner booth, sipping her coffee. Her face was serious, and there was something in her eyes that made my stomach tighten. This wasn't going to be a casual chat. I slid into the booth, giving her a nod. "All right, Lauren, spill it," I said, my voice steady, but I could feel the tension building. Lauren sighed, her eyes scanning the room before she leaned in. "It's about Kendra and Chase." The mention of Chase made my stomach drop. Chase. That guy. Kendra's so-called friend. I'd never been comfortable with him. He was always around, but I never trusted him. There was something about him that made my skin crawl. "What about him?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. Lauren looked around before continuing. "My friend was at a bar a few weeks ago. She knows you and Kendra were engaged, and she's mentioned you guys a few times. So, when she saw Kendra there with Chase, something seemed off. I stared at her, my mind racing, trying to figure out where this was going. "Off how?" I asked. Lauren leaned in even closer, lowering her voice. They were holding hands and kissing. I felt a knot form in my stomach, my breath catching in my throat. My head spun as I tried to process the words. Kendra, my fiancée, had been holding hands and kissing Chase. "Wait," I said, my voice tight. "Let me see the picture." Lauren hesitated, but then pulled out her phone and scrolled through it before sliding it across the table. There it was, a blurry but unmistakable photo of Kendra and Chase, his arm around her waist, her hand on his chest. I stared at the photo, feeling a strange mix of anger, disbelief, and clarity. "Well, that explains a lot," I said, pushing the phone back toward her. Lauren looked at me with sympathy. "Adam, I'm sorry. I didn't know if I should tell you, but after everything that's happened, I feel like you need to know." I appreciated her honesty, but none of this was her fault. I wasn't mad at her. "Thanks for letting me know," I said, my voice calm, maybe too calm. "You okay?" she asked, eyeing me like she thought I might blow up. "Oh, I'm fine," I said with a half smile. "Better than fine, actually. At least now I know the truth." The truth was, I wasn't surprised. Somewhere deep down, I had known that something wasn't right for a while. Kendra had been acting weird for months, distracted, defensive, picking fights over nothing. I had chalked it up to wedding stress, but now it all made sense. She wasn't just stressed, she was guilty. And that slap, that wasn't just a moment of frustration. It was her trying to bait me into giving her an excuse to flip the script and make me the bad guy. She didn't want to end things. She wanted me to do it for her, so she wouldn't look like the villain. But I didn't take the bait. I didn't snap. I stayed calm. I told her to pack her things and leave. And now, with Lauren's information, I knew I had done exactly the right thing. After Lauren left, I sat in the cafe for a while, sipping my coffee and thinking about my next move. I wasn't going to confront Kendra right away. No, I wanted to see how she would react when I didn't take the bait. She had been trying to control the narrative since the breakup, painting herself as the victim and me as the unreasonable fiancé who couldn't handle the pressure. But now I had the upper hand, and I wasn't going to let her spin her lies any longer. I got home later that day, and I had a plan. I didn't want to deal with her over text or over the phone anymore. I needed to face her, on my terms, and show her that she no longer had any power over me. I texted her, "We need to talk. Meet me at my place tomorrow at 7:00 p.m. She responded almost instantly. "Finally! I've been waiting for you to reach out. I knew you'd realize you overreacted." I didn't bother replying. Let her think what she wanted. Tomorrow, she was going to see just how wrong she was. The next day, I spent most of the afternoon preparing for our meeting. I didn't want to deal with chaos or drama. Kendra thrived in that environment, but I wasn't going to play that game anymore. I cleared the living room of all distractions papers, work stuff, anything that could mess with the calm, controlled atmosphere I was setting up. The only thing that remained was a single printed photo, placed right in the center of the coffee table. It was purposeful. Every detail was deliberate. I wanted her to walk in, see that photo, and immediately realized this wasn't going to go the way she had planned. She thrived on disarray, emotional outbursts, and twisting things to fit her narrative. But I was setting the tone now. When the clock struck 7:00 p.m., I heard a knock at the door. I opened it, and there she was, standing in the frame. Kendra. She was wearing the same dress she had worn on our 3rd anniversary. Back when things were good. The sight of her in that dress brought back memories. But those memories quickly faded as I saw her now different. She wasn't the composed, confident woman I had known. Her hair was messy, her makeup smeared, her eyes puffy like she had been crying for days. This wasn't the Kendra I had been engaged to. This was someone else. Adam, she said, her voice shaky. Please, I need to talk to you. I didn't even let her finish before I stepped back to close the door. No, I said firmly. She immediately cried out, holding the door frame with her hand to stop me from closing it. Wait, please, just hear me out. I've been thinking about everything, and I know I messed up, but I've changed. I need you to know that. I stared at her, not saying anything. My hand was still on the door, ready to shut it in her face. This wasn't about what she had to say anymore. I wasn't going to listen to her excuses or emotional manipulation. Kendra, the first, said, still standing firm. I don't know what part of "we're done" you didn't understand, but nothing you say is going to change that. Her eyes welled up with tears as she started crying harder. I know I hurt you, okay? I know I screwed up, but I've been going to therapy, journaling, working on myself. I've been trying to fix everything I ruined. I shook my head. Good for you. But that's not my problem anymore. Her tears didn't stop. Adam, please, I love you. I never stopped loving you. I didn't know how to handle things back then. I got lost. I let out a short, sharp laugh. Lost. No, you didn't get lost. Kendra, you made choices. You cheated. You lied. And you slapped me. None of that was an accident, and none of it was my fault. Her expression turned defensive. That's not fair, she snapped, her voice rising. I made a mistake. Okay, but you weren't exactly perfect either. You were so distant, so focused on budgets and logistics. You didn't even notice how stressed I was. I tilted my head slightly, unfazed by her attempt to shift the blame. And that stress justified lying, sneaking around, slapping me. Her face flushed with anger, but no words came out. She was backed into a corner, and she didn't like it. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. I get it now, I said coldly. The slap wasn't just a moment of anger, was it? You wanted me to react. You wanted an excuse to end this without taking responsibility for anything. Am I wrong? She stayed silent, her eyes refusing to meet mine. I could see the guilt in her eyes now, the desperation. She had pushed me, and I hadn't snapped. I hadn't taken the bait, and now she was scrambling. You wanted me to lose my cool, I continued, leaning even closer, but I didn't, and I won't. And that's why you're here now, trying to salvage the narrative you thought you could control. Adam, please, she said, her voice breaking, tears streaming down her face. I messed up. I know I did, but we can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes. I took a step back, shaking my head. Fix what, Kendra? The trust, the respect. You think those things just snap back into place? No, this isn't something you fix. This is who you are, and I'm not interested in being part of it. Her expression faltered. She stood up abruptly, her voice rising again. So that's it. You're just going to throw everything away. 4 years, Adam, 4 years, and you're going to walk away over one mistake. I stood my ground. This wasn't one mistake, Kendra. This was a series of choices. You chose to cheat. You chose to lie. You chose to cross the line when I didn't give you the reaction you wanted. This isn't me throwing anything away. This is me walking away from someone who already did. Her tears flowed freely now, and she reached out for me. I stepped back again, shaking my head. No, you don't get to play the victim here. Not after everything you've done. She stood there for a moment, her hand frozen in midair, her face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw it. She knew she had lost. Get out, I said quietly, pointing to the door. Her lips trembled as she whispered. Adam, out, I said again, more firmly this time. She grabbed her purse. Her shoulders slumped. She hesitated before turning to leave. But just before she stepped out, she stopped, turning back to me. I'm sorry, she said softly, barely audible. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I closed the door behind her and locked it. Silence filled the room. That was it. The last time I would ever see Kendra in my life. I felt no anger, no sadness, no regret. It was like a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying had been lifted. I was free. Kendra was gone, and I was moving on. No more manipulation, no more emotional games, just peace. Let me know if you'd like to discuss the story further or need any more adjustments.